Hello everybody, this is General Yanis, and today in Death Card Tactics I will be looking at the very important secondary objective choices and how they match the Death Card army and the Death Card army playstyle. Let's go through it. So in 9th edition we have a significant change to how victory points are achieved in matched play. So basically we have primary objectives and they are mission based, but typically for all the missions in the core rules, starting from turn 2, if you control one objective in the map, you get 5 points. If you control 2 or in some cases 3 objectives, you get 5 points more. And if you control more objectives than the opponent, you got 5 points more. So the maximum points in the game is capped to 45 points per primary. So you can score them for 4 turns, and if you get all 3 in a couple of turns, you actually max out the primaries. But this is not very easy to do, but you can still get let's say 10 points per turn from the primaries is not that tough to achieve. Apart from the primary objectives, we also have the choice of secondary objectives, and there are different categories of secondary objectives, and for every mission typically has an optional secondary objective that can be selected, and the player has to do 3 choices, maximum taking 1 per category, and each of those secondary objectives can give a maximum of 15 points. And therefore with 3 objectives there is a grand total of 45 points, and we see that 45 points from the primary and 45 points from the secondary. Basically then that means that secondaries have a very high significance for the final score, and looking at the secondaries that you are able to select, we can say that not all secondaries are created equal. Some seem to be better or much better than others, and therefore if you select poorly on your secondary choices, basically you could lose the game before it even begins. And for me that's quite a stressful thought, that by choosing a little bit badly in the beginning, before even the first shot or the first units are placed, you can just put yourself in such a disadvantage that you cannot win. In this video, I will be looking at the standard secondary objectives. The mission-specific secondary objectives will be the subject of another video. What secondary objectives to consider, especially as Death Card, and let's have a look at some general considerations. So the first category of secondary objectives is called Purge the Enemy. And here we have the first one is called Assassinate, and this gives you 3 victory points for each enemy character model that is destroyed. Overall, this could be a good objective, of course, provided that the enemy army has several characters, and this has the potential to give you the maximum 15 points if your opponent has 5 characters. If your opponent only, for example, has 2 characters, then you can only get 6 points, and then it's probably not worth taking this objective. Overall, I think this is good for Death Card. Assassinate, but the Death Card units are quite durable, and at the end of the battle you can still have your unit standing, and maybe you have thinned out the opponent, and you can get access to the characters, and you can remove, let's say if you remove the infantry screen or destroy the vehicles protecting or hiding the characters, and you can come into melee combat. Typically Death Card is good at, the Death Card characters are good in melee and can take out other characters. So I think Assassinate is a good option, provided that of course the opponent has at least four characters for you to target. The second objective in this category is Bring It Down. This gives you 2 victory points for every monster or vehicle model destroyed, which has wounds less than 9, and you get 3 victory points if it has more than 9, or 9 or more. 10 or more. Yes, sir. So This is very, so this is quite similar to the assassinate, but instead of characters, it's targeting monsters and vehicles. Overall, therefore, it's a good objective, provided that the enemy army has several monsters, vehicles, and this also gives you the potential to get 15 points at the end of the game. So if your opponent has 3-4 vehicles and they have high number of wounds, you can still get maybe 12 points. That's also a good payout for a secondary. Again, like the assassinate, I think it's good for death card, this one, and this important here is to consider the plague burst crawlers with heavy anti-vehicle weapons and hard-hitting characters like the Demon Prince, and maybe hard-hitting Marines, Terminators, maybe Terminators deep striking and charging the enemy vehicle backfield artillery. And this is, of course, could be a good option. Then we have the Titan Slayers, which gives you 10 victory points for destroying a Titanic model and 15 victory points for destroying 2. And this, I guess, is very situational. I mean, does the opponent, of course, have Titanic models or not? And are we able to bring them down? So basically, I would say that the first two are better than this one. This could also be useful if your opponent has 2 Titanic models, but then you have to make sure that you actually have the firepower and the combat to be able to take them down. Finally, the last option in this category is Slay the Warlord. It gives you 6 victory points for destroying the enemy warlord. This for me is quite lackluster. Only 6 victory points is possible, and in my opinion, I think it's better to consider one of the other 3 choices in this category or some other choices from other categories. Yeah. Continuing to the second category, we have Warcraft that are linked to psychic powers, let's say. So here the first secondary objective is called Mental Interrogation. It gives you 3 victory points every time you perform the Mental Interrogation special psychic action. And so one psyker can attempt once per turn, and it must target an enemy character within 18 inches. This special psychic action can be denied, and the psyker cannot cast other spells in that turn. So you are taking, let's say, in order to if you take this, then you also have to take into account that one of your psyker units will not be able to cast the other spells that you probably take him to perform in the list. You have to be successful for all 5 turns in order to get the maximum 50 victory points. A thing that makes it a good match for Death Guard is that Death Guard can have a psychic superiority. Let's say you have access to a lot of psyker models like the Demon Prince, Typhus, Plaguecaster, Mortarion, and Sorcerer, and many opponents don't typically have or take psykers. So then if you have a lot of psyker models and the opponent has very limited or none and cannot deny, then this could be a potential to take. And yeah, so I think it's worth considering taking this one under these conditions. One issue could be to get within 18 inches of the opponent characters, and this probably is difficult the first turn. If you can pull it through in the next 4 turns, I think 12 victory points would also be good for a payout. Then we have the second objective here is the Psychic Ritual. This gives you 15 victory points at the end of the game if the Psychic Ritual psychic action has been succeeded 3 times in the game. And in order to do this Psychic Ritual, you have to be 6 inches within the battlefield center, and this has more the character of all or nothing reward. If you only make 2, you get 0 points. And of course this can be denied, and of course maybe the opponent will try to stop you from getting to the center. If you plan to go for the center, maybe it's worth considering, but only few mission maps have objectives in the middle, so typically you would like to go to other places, and you should have quite a big psychic superiority here and several psyker models to have a high chance of making 3 actions and surviving. This could have a synergy with investigate sites, another secondary objective, which also takes you to the center of the plan. But again, all or nothing reward. If you get 0 points instead of taking another choice which might give you 9 or 12 points, I mean, of course, this is a bit more risky. Finally, the third objective is abhor the witch. Here, this can only be selected if you don't have any psychers in your own army, and it gives you 5 victory points for each destroyed psyker character and 3 victory points for each psyker that's not a character when you destroy them. Again, it can only be selected if you don't have any psychers in your own army, and typically not very useful for death card. Typically, I think most of the death card list will take some psyker, so then you cannot probably select this one. Continuing in the third category, we have no mercy, no respite, and the first objective is thin the ranks. And when I first read this one, I thought, that's nice. You keep a tally of all the models that you slay, and then it gives you a big incentive to destroy the opponent's models. But then when you look at the scoring, it's not very good. So for every 10 models destroyed, you gain 1 victory point. A model with 10 wounds or more gives you 1 victory point. So for example, destroying a model with 9 wounds or 8 wounds still nets you 1/10 of a victory point. So you get a very low score per killed model, only maybe potentially good against a horde type army with a vast number of models that are easy to kill. But even so, if you manage to kill 60 orc boys or 60 cultists or something like that, it still would give you 6 victory points. I mean, many times you can just count how many models are in your opponent army. You will probably not have 150 models to kill. And it's really bad versus more elite armies with many wounds per model. For example, if you kill 5 intercessors, or like now 5 heavy intercessors and 5 aggressors, you are destroying a lot of difficult unit models, and you still will get 1 victory point. So I think this is not a very good secondary objective. The second one is called attrition. This gives you 4 victory points for every battle round if more enemy units are killed than friendly units. Here you have a good potential to get the maximum 15 victory points. You just need to complete this just 4 times. This could be potentially good for Death Card, because Death Card is quite a resilient army, but sometimes also Death Card can also struggle to take out a lot of enemy units, especially in the early part of the game, being slow up the field, for example. And if you take some weaker units like poxwalkers or some cultists to hold some objectives, those can also be easy to kill for your opponent, and then you cannot. It's difficult to take out, let's say, 3-4 units, and then the opponent only takes 1 unit out of you. So this could be promising, but it could also be difficult to achieve it consistently. Then we have the third one is while we stand, we fight. This takes the 3 models in the army with the highest point cost, and you get 5 victory points for each of those models that survive the battle. So this is quite good if you can get your Plague Burst Crawlers to be the highest cost models. For example, a Demon Prince is more expensive, has a more higher point cost value than a Plague Burst Crawler. So in this case, if you take a Demon Prince, then he would be one of your highest cost model, and I think he's very good, but he's also quite squishy, and the way I would like to use him more aggressively and attack, then there is a high probability that he would die. And also, for example, Mortarion is also, of course, the highest cost model, and he typically never survives a whole battle. So if you can get your 3 Plague Burst Crawlers to be the highest cost, it could give you 15 points because they are quite resilient, and you can, if you additionally combine it with the Ironclad Furnace for 4+ invul saves. You have also some stratagems in the Poxmongers to regain some wounds. this could be quite helpful, and it could also push your opponent to come after your Plague Burst crawlers, making the enemy more exposed. Finally, the fourth objective here is the first strike, and this gives you 5 victory points for a unit destroyed in the first battle round, plus 3 victory points for each additional unit destroyed. From own experience, I think this is not very easy for the death card because it can be slow off the mark, and I think there is a high probability that you might kill one unit and maybe not, and then you get 0 points, and there's nothing to do in the rest of the battle trying to get more points here. So I think this is, unless your opponent is putting a lot of very exposed and not very tough units in very exposed in the first turn, and then you can capitalize on that, then I guess this could be quite difficult to do. The fourth category is the battlefield supremacy. Here we have engage on all fronts. This is quite interesting. It gives you 2 victory points at the end of your turn, each of your turn, if you have units within 3 quadrants of the gaming board. And you get 3 victory points instead if you have all 4 quadrants. And you have to be wholly within the quadrants and not within 6 inches of the center. This can be a really good one. Normally it's easy to get at least 3 quadrants from the get-go of the battle, and suits well with the primary trying to get to some objectives spread out in the gaming board. And let's say even if you don't get the 4 quadrants, if you can get your units in 3 quadrants for 5 rounds, it gives you 10 victory points, which is quite good. It could be difficult for Death Guard to get all 4 quadrants, but this can be solved if we have some more fast-moving units like a blow drone, and also if we have a deep strike, bringing some terminators to have access to more quadrants. The line breaker objective gives you 4 victory points at the end of your turn if 2 units or more are within the enemy deployment zone. This could be difficult to get, and also staying. Many of the objectives you are trying to get are not in your opponent's deployment zone, so this could be difficult unless you go specifically to try to take your opponent's objective. Deep strike could be a good option here, and if you can do it from turn 2, you can still max 15 victory points. Finally, the third here is domination. This gives you 3 victory points at the end of your turn if you control more than half of the total objective markers. And this is what you basically are trying to do with the primary objective, taking a lot of objectives. But this can be tough to pull through, especially turn 1. And this would require your army to spread out maybe more, and there is a high risk not getting domination. If you get 3 objectives and your opponents also have 3, or if you have equal objectives, still if you have a lot of objectives, you might not score domination. And by the way, if you really get consistently domination of the objectives, if you really have more than half the total objective markers, you probably would win the game anyway through the primary scoring. So I guess this is difficult to achieve, and if you can achieve this, then you probably win in any case. So it's better to select something else, I would say. Finally, the fifth category is shadow operation. So all these are some actions. The first one is called raise banners high. It gives you 1 victory point at the end of each turn, and the end of the battle, or basically is 1 victory point at the end of your command phase and at the end of battle for every objective marked with your banner on it. So this introduces the raise banner action, and an infantry unit within an objective marker at the end of movement, and there are no enemies nearby, can make this action to raise the banner, but then it cannot do any other action until end of own turn. The banners can be taken down if the enemy controls the objective. There is a potential to score some good points, but it's best done with some cheap infantry unit like the Poxwalker staying on an objective. If you can raise 2 banners early, let's say on 2 objectives and defend, this can score a lot of good points. There are some maps with 2 objectives in your own deployment zone, this could be quite interesting to start with if you can, yeah, raise the flags in the first turn. With some cheap infantry, you would not lose doing some other actions and then defending those. Then this could bring you some good points. The second one is investigate sites. It gives you 3 victory points when an investigation action is successfully performed. 1 infantry unit, which is not a character, can attempt to do this within 6 inches of the center, and there has to be no enemy units within 6 inches of the center, and it completes at the end of own turn. Here we have the potential to get the full 15 points, but we need to control and dominate the center during most of the battle to score a lot of points. This has the synergy with a psychic ritual where we should try to do 3 psychic actions near the center. So if you can take the center and take maybe investigate sites and psychic ritual, then this could give you a lot of good points. If you plan to go for the center, as I said before, however, only few maps have already some objectives there, and maybe your opponent can try to stop you by just bringing some units in the center, and then it's difficult for you to perform these actions. The last one is repair a teleport homer. This gives you 5 victory points each time a repair action is successfully performed, and 1 infantry unit can perform this action if it's fully within the enemy deployment zone. And then it cannot do anything else. The action is completed at the next own command phase if the unit is still wholly within the enemy deployment zone. Basically, this means that when you start this action, you cannot do anything more with this infantry unit, and the enemy has his whole turn to react on this. So I think this is very risky, and your opponent might focus to take this unit out before it completes the action. So I think this is, yeah, first you have to come to the opponent's deployment zone, and you have to survive there at least one of his turn, and then that gives you one time the 5 points, and then you have to do it again. All right, so that was a lot of text and a lot of secondary objectives. I tried to make a summary and giving my view on the secondary objectives, trying to rank them as good, medium, and bad. So in the Purge the enemy category, as I said, assassinate and bring it down could be some good options, like assassinating characters or shooting vehicles. Titan Slayers is a bit situational, and Slay the Warlord I think is not so is lackluster. In the Warcraft category, the mental interrogation and psychic ritual are medium good. If you have the psychic superiority, you might consider it, but again, you have to think that you cannot utilize your psyker to do other spells when attempting to do these actions here. Abhor the Witch requires that you don't have any psyker, so I don't think it's very good for Death Guard. No Mercy nor Respite, while we stand we fight, is a good secondary objective, especially if you can get your Plague Burst Crawlers to be the highest cost models in your army, and then you protect them and you have the extra relics for their survivability. Attrition could be a good option, but a bit more risky. Thin the ranks is not a good one, and First Strike I don't think is a good match for Death Guard. On Battlefield Supremacy, engage on all fronts. I think it's a very good one, and for many maps with how the units start, it's a bit no-brainer to take this one, because it's very easy to get to 3 quadrants and then you score points every turn. Linebreaker could be okay if you can maybe deep strike or end your turn at the deployment zone. Domination, as I said, I think is difficult to achieve, and if you do, you probably are winning anyway through the primaries. Shadow operations, like Warcraft, here this requires actions from infantry units or infantry characters that could be doing some other things instead. If raise banners high could be interesting if you have 2 objectives in your own deployment zone. Investigate sites, if you go for the center, could be combined with psychic ritual. and repair teleport Homer. I think this is very difficult because you have to survive a whole turn doing this extra action, and your opponent has the time to turn back. So this concludes my review on secondary objectives and the different categories. And on a next video, I will be looking at mission-specific secondary objectives. What are your thoughts of some good secondary objectives? What do you typically choose? Do you have a favorite, or do you have some favorites if your opponent chooses a certain secondary objective? If you like this video, you can press like and leave a comment, and you can subscribe to my channel where I will be posting more Death Guard tactics videos. And with this word, I will be signing out. General Yanis is signing out, and stay safe out there. Bye-bye.